So you clearly have studied lots of books. You studied dynamic individuals from all around the world whose great works have been translated. But there's another aspect of yourself as well. You told me a couple of years ago that sometimes you don't read at all and you focus on, as you said, being. But what would you say are some of the most powerful books you've read in your life that help you to understand the difference between information, knowledge, opinions, and truth? Take your time.
Actually, I think it started with my 7th grade teacher. She had a class in English. They teach you what is the difference between fiction, nonfiction. Then English, they teach you what's the difference between opinion and what's fact. And if you can understand what is a fact, then that can lead you to understand the nature of truth. Because as I said, truth is always founded upon what is actual and what is factual. And truth is never going to be to the degree that it's speculative, that it cannot be independently discovered by different individuals that don't even have to be connected in time nor in place. For example, the same truths that Siddhartha Gautama discovered was the same truths that the Vedic masters and masters of spiritual traditions all over the world discovered. That cultivated that beautiful way of life that Confucius and the wisdom that he expounded, which was based off of rightness, balance, justice, and peace. Doesn't that sound like might? Yes. And so people that discover the truth, no matter where they at, they find the principles. They discover that they all are talking about the same thing and have discovered the same thing. As for example, people was years ago debated about, was the earth flat or was the earth round?
Yes, let's go back into that.
But when people start doing their investigation, they discover that no, the earth is not flat. We can sail a ship around the earth and end up back where we came from.
Exactly.
That was the biggest mystery. White people thought that they would go over the curve of the earth and just fall off the world in the flat earth model.
And we can sympathize with that. I mean,
I can't sympathize.
No, I'm saying you can at the time.
I mean, it doesn't.
A thought experiment of living at that time with the limited information and experience they had, you could see how they could believe that. Just like at one point in time, we thought most human beings believed that the earth was the center of the whole world, the entire world.
Around the same time, people
there was no concept of a solar system
then. Believe their own egoism.
Right.
Was the center of the
Pre-solar system era. They didn't have the concept, the model of the solar system that we have.
Right.
And have verified.
But exactly, the Europeans did not have these things, and so they had a lot of opinions, a lot of conjecture, but they didn't have a lot of truth. And so the thing about the truth is that when you discover it, no matter where you at, no matter what you're doing, you will know it's the truth. It can be independently verified. It can be independently studied. It can be independently researched. When you don't have the truth, then you have something that's standing on quicksand, and you can't prove it, you can't back it up.
So around when did you begin to taste the difference between just general information and actual knowledge? Just information about religion, for example. You know about the history of Christianity. You know about alternative histories regarding the character named Jesus Christ. Yeshua, his name is Hebrew. Right. And the Latin, Jesus.
If the question is when did information become real knowledge for me, let's say that.
Yes.
That's when I tasted the reality of what I was studying, of all the different things that I was studying. And that takes an expansion of consciousness. That's not something that you can ascertain through a book. That's not something that no one else can really give to you and tell you about. Or let's say they can tell you about it and you can know it's yours. It's something about that you taste. For example,
I can tell you about a higher self or a higher consciousness, right?
and people,
That's information, right? I've heard people say, "Oh, I've heard of that."
right, and
I've
people
heard
can
that there's such a
regurgitate
thing.
that your higher self, you open a third eye, and I'm wisdom, and
That's
I'm
all.
in tune with the universe.
That's
and
all
of that.
information. Would you say? That's all information.
That's all information, but we don't live from that reality because those ideas are only pointing us to a reality that we must make actual and factual once again. And so we must make those ideas that man is God or that I have a higher self. We have to explore, is that true or not? We just can't believe it because Noble Drew Ali said it. We can't just believe it because it's in some occult literature or Buddha said it or Elijah Muhammad said it. We must find out for ourselves. That's how your knowledge become real. I didn't want to know if Christianity is a dead religion or not. I had to practice and live Christianity to see if there was any life in it. I had to practice and live Islam to study if there was any life in it. At one time when I was filled up with the knowledge, I've been debating and debunking Christian preachers since I was 13, walking around the ghetto with a Bible in my hands preaching. Now, but it was when I was about 25 years old is when I started studying the teachings of the Philokalia and the Desert Fathers and the mystics of the church. And that's when I was confronted with a whole nother Christianity, a Christianity that I involved myself in intimately and that yielded results and that let me came to the realization, and I was a practicing, known as a Muslim minister then, that you cannot be one who submits to the will of God until you discover the reality of what the Christians would say, Jesus Christ in yourself. But I understand that this Christ, this Jesus that the Desert Fathers was talking about was all symbolic of a force or power in your own being that you can discover, that you can find, and it's that force that wishes to crush wickedness and imperfection and imbalance within ourselves. And that is that force of Christ that is within you. So that's when when the knowledge became, so when it was just information, it was a bunch of rhetoric, a bunch of information. I had facts. It was backed by actual and factual, but all wore it on the surface of my being. It hadn't integrated into my heart. I hadn't had no one-on-one personal experience with what is Christianity. I hadn't had no one-on-one experience with the religion experiences of our ancestors when they came up with ancestral worship and that cult thousands upon thousands of years ago. It was like, even with the Nation of Islam, and I'll leave with this point. I grew up in the Nation of Islam. We learned that God came in the person of Master Wallace Farad Muhammad. Now to believe that he is God is one thing, but how can I make that a reality for myself? What benefit is by me worshiping a man whom I've never seen, whom I will never see, who's possibly and most likely deceased? What good and benefit is that going to do for me? How can I make this practical? When you begin to question things like that, that's when you begin to start making the steps of making your information begin to be real. That's when information begins to turn into knowledge because it becomes more practical.
This is Desmond Wood, Mind Elevation Nation, signing off. Stay tuned for our next episode. Behind me is the Nature Center at the lovely Holiday Park. I'm about to engage on a nice meditative walk